They make all the wrong choices, and they hit the most ultimate low. And for many people, that ultimate low becomes their highest spiritual experience.
Take a moment to reflect and remember what your purpose is. Finding that meaning behind everything.
A covenantal relationship is very, very different from a consumeristic relationship.
The first time a 3-year-old lies, is there really accountability? Probably not so much for a 3-year-old, but if she has consequences, that's when that agency to choose to make that lie continuously becomes a problem.
This is where nice parenting becomes an issue. I used to think, why did Eve partake of the fruit first? Like, I know the rest of the world outside of the LDS faith, like, boo-hoos her. But in our faith, like, we really reverence and revere her. I was like, why was it that she partook fruit? Like, I always just thought, like, women are better, or they're more intuitive, or, something of that nature. But as I was studying about this, it hit me.
Welcome to the No Bushel Podcast. We are your hosts today, Big Ben and the Burning Bushman. We're excited to get back with you guys. It's been taking kind of a hiatus of sorts.
We apologize for that.
Yeah, we obviously this is something we do on the side, and we have normal lives, and that's just been kind of hectic and crazy for the last little bit.
Busier. Well, that, and we actually recorded a couple of videos that for some reason didn't record properly. So we finished our video and then realized, wait a second, we don't have proper audio for that or something. So
sorry for that, but we are back and we're excited to chat with you guys and get into our next topic. So I'll let kind of introduce that.
We're going to be discussing agency. So I was asked to speak for a youth conference this week on the topic of choice and how decisions determine destiny. Anyway, in my studies, the concept of agency that I've always known, I've thought of it in slightly different ways. And so just thought we would discuss these topics. I don't think there's going to be anything that's like overly controversial or different today. However, my hope is to maybe enlarge our view of agency and its purpose and what it means to act for ourselves and not be acted upon. Because Elder Bednar's used that term a lot, and it's a term that I've always liked, but it's kind of, I don't know, I've gained new meaning with it in my studies. So just a couple of thoughts here to start, and that is, maybe let's start with Adam and Eve.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question. Did Adam and Eve have agency in the garden?
Yes.
What about before the commandment to not partake of the fruit of the tree of knowledge and evil? Did they have agency?
That's a good question. I would say yes, but we don't know necessarily what they would have used that agency for.
So we know that they were told to be in the garden, to tend to the garden, right? And that we're told they were given their agency. Now, did we have agency in the premortal life?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, right? So has there ever been a time when we've not had agency?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Not that I'm aware of either. So then we get to the commandment to not partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that commandment different?
Why was it different?
Yeah. I mean, like, God told them to tend the garden. Why don't we say they were commanded to tend the garden? Like, what about that commandment was different?
Well, there were definitely more consequences for disobeying that commandment as opposed to not tending the garden.
Absolutely. More opposition.
Yeah.
Right. So, I hadn't really thought about this before, but when we think of the Garden of Eden and them tending the garden, like, I think of them planting and making things, like whatnot.
Yeah.
I might even think of, well, I just hadn't thought about this before, but like, did they have to pull any weeds?
That's a good question, because it wasn't until after they were kicked out that, at least, like, the way I've always thought about it was, this is an interesting question, because I know they're commanded to tend the garden, but also,
was there any sweat?
What did they need to really do?
Because it was not until after that they said, by the sweat of thy brow shalt thou eat.
Right. So I maybe tending to the garden meant something different than what we interpret it to be. I don't know.
I mean, in my mind, it was a paradise, right? It was perfect.
Right.
It was.
They didn't really have to do anything.
And so
Maybe.
it just kind of grew on its own. So I don't necessarily know what tending the garden meant, but I do think that it came very easily. There was very little opposition. Whatever it was, maybe they could transplant things different places, or maybe they could plant seeds and they would just grow fine and whatnot.
Sure.
But there were, in my mind, probably no weeds, probably no, like, whatever they wanted to grow just grew. Like, it just came naturally, and yeah, there was no opposition. And this concept of what opposition does. So we know in Scripture that there must needs be an opposition in all things.
Yeah.
But why? What is it that opposition does?
Well, as we're talking about Scripture and what we've learned spiritually, I mean, we look at the opposition of good and evil, and we can't know what's good without evil. So I think that's just generally my answer would be opposition allows you to know what you have, and to understand it and appreciate it. If you don't have any opposition, then there's no good or bad, or better or worse. You just are. You exist, but there's not really a meaning or.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. So there's no meaning. We know that Adam and Eve, like it even says, like there's no joy because there's no sorrow. There's no right, like, and it kind of goes all of those comparisons. And we often use the term choice and accountability in the church. I don't know, you've heard those terms. And even so I did this. If you go to the gospel topics section, and they have a thing on agency, and it actually says agency and accountability. And I remember they used to like define those slightly differently. Like, I feel like culturally, or for whatever reason, like we just focus on agency. We don't really talk about the accountability side of it. And even now, it says agency and accountability is the title, but if you actually read the description, it says nothing about accountability.
Interesting.
However, I had found an old talk by Elder Maxwell that was actually super cool. He talked about this. And so let's, when I go home every night, almost every night, it's actually very common. Rarely does this not happen. I will, when I'm driving, I don't drive all that often, but when I'm driving, if I drive home and I get...
You hardly ever drive home.
So like Sundays and once or twice a week I drive home. So I pull into the driveway, and it's like my son Asa, he's 3. It's like he's just waiting by the door. He must be watching something, or he hears the garage door open or something. And he comes running, and he runs out into the driveway, and he puts his hands up and he says, stop. And he wants to get in, and he wants to drive the car with me into the house, which is fun, right?
Yeah.
What kid doesn't like to drive the car? Now, Asa has agency, and he has agency to make that choice, to get in the car. However, if that car crashes, is he responsible for it?
I would put you as the responsible one.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm the one that's really driving it, right?
Yeah.
Like he's
sitting,
thinks he's
sitting
driving
in your lap
it.
and he's touching the wheel, but I'm sure he's not actually driving.
But there's very little consequence to that, very little accountability
right
to that. Now, I have another son, just turned 15, just got his driver's permit, and now he is actually behind the wheel. And that is exciting. It's also kind of scary, not just for me. I mean, there are times when it's kind of scary for him too, even though he enjoys it and he likes it. Now, let's say that he makes a mistake and pushes the gas pedal instead of the brake pedal and rams into something. Like who is responsible?
So yeah, at this point it would be him,
right?
Rather than you. I'm curious, just as a side note, does he run out at the driveway and ask to drive into the into the garage?
No, he does not. So, just and the reason I tell this is to sense what accountability is.
Yeah,
that it's a heightened sense, and you can't have accountability without opposition. So that link, I don't know that I had fully formed that link in my mind, that by having an opposition or a consequence to the choices that you make, there are real consequences for good or for bad.
Right.
And without those real consequences, you have agency, but it's really kind of meaningless agency. you have to have the accountability. And so many choices and decisions. It's easy to think of how an innocent child grows and becomes an adult, and they gain greater levels of agency, right? And we kind of like to say that, kids are innocent and adults are not. But really, I think that there are things, no matter what age you are, there are things that you are still innocent in, that you haven't had. So if we look at natural maturational processes, okay, so natural maturational processes, we start innocent. We don't know anything. Think of just like brand new baby, right? All they can do are reflexive things and imitation.
Right.
And they imitate what the examples that they have, and then that gives them some experience. And as they gain that experience, they start noticing where there's opposition in certain actions.
Sure.
And based on that opposition, that experience can turn to more meaningful agency. Because even a baby has agency, right? I mean, like,
right.
we say that they're innocent, but, I mean, they can choose whether they're trying to walk or whether they're trying to speak or what they're thinking about, right? Like we can't conceptualize what they're thinking about, but there's still something going on through that head,
right?
And there's some level of agency associated with that.
I think what you're talking about right now speaks to why, like, even as my 3-year-old is learning how to lie and chooses things that I otherwise would say is not a good thing, that socially and human as far as human development goes, we actually view that as a good thing because they're learning, they're being able to use their agency to make choices, and so their brain is actually functioning and developing to a point where they know she's learning what's good and what is bad, and hopefully, I mean, as a parent can teach her lying's not so good, but and that's where the accountability comes in. Because at the first time a 3-year-old lies, is there really accountability? Probably not so much for a 3-year-old, but if she learns that it's a bad thing and has consequences, that's when that agency to choose to make that lie continuously becomes a problem.
This is where nice parenting becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
If a parent doesn't provide accountability by creating opposition or rules or consequences to behavior, children really flounder when they don't have a set of organized rules.
Yep. And part of that is they need the opposition, like you're saying. Like if we don't give opposition, now don't oppose everything your kids do. I don't think that's what we're saying at all. We want to promote the good things that they do, but when they make a choice that goes against what you need to give that opposition so that they can learn what is right and wrong, good and bad.
So when a child grows up to the point that they leave the house, right? And they go off on their own, and we've all experienced this, right? Like that first year or two that you're away from home, don't you just feel like you're like learning so many things and you're like internalizing them, right? It's before you went through the actions, and then you internalized things, and you really thought through and figured out, like, why am I doing this?
Oh yeah, lots of things. Whether it's church related and like, why am I going to church all the time to actually believe this, or school? Like, I don't have to go to all my classes. My parents aren't here to pick me up and take me to school. All of those things. What meals to make and how to spend your money. All aspects of life, we go through that process.
Yeah. And this idea that early on in progression, we are innocent, we are imitating, and we still have agency within that, but there's very little consequence. And as we gain experience and opposition, we grow gradually in the principle of agency and accountability, right? To where early on, we are completely acted upon by everything around us because that's all we know. And there's really very little creative thought, and very little of the choices that we make are really our choice so much as it is just following suit. And I think that this goes for the good and the bad. You can say, people will have good parents, people will have bad parents, and they're going to follow, the examples that they have. But not only that, we live in a culture that is bombarded with marketing, with algorithms, with phones, things that we follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And we're always going to follow the path of least resistance until there's let me rephrase that. As we follow the path of least resistance, if we are just going through the motions, are we really choosing? There are little choices, but there's very little meaningful choice.
Sure.
Right? And the whole point of the plan of salvation, I believe, is not to have meaningless agency, but is to develop into someone that has meaningful agency, to really make choices of your own free will and choice because you've had the experience to know the good from the evil.
I like that.
And so I had an object lesson, which I actually thought, for me, I really liked this object lesson. So I got a cookie sheet, big cookie sheet. And on it, I labeled it, this is earth life, mortality.
Okay.
And at the bottom corner, I labeled it captivity and death, or hell. And the other corner, I labeled liberty and eternal life. And then, it was like just on a flat table, and I put a marble on the top corner and just set it there, and it didn't go anywhere, right? And to me, that's kind of like Adam and Eve in the garden before they partake of the fruit. It's very hard to progress anywhere when there's no meaningful agency. And the one major consequence at that point, that was all they were ready for, was just one choice. And I've always wondered, used to bother me a little bit. This is going to sound funny. You guys are going to think I'm weird, but I used to think, why did Eve partake of the fruit first? Like, I know the rest of the world outside of the LDS faith, like, boo-hoos her. But in our faith, like, we really reverence and revere her. I was why was it that she partook for it? Like, I always just thought, like, women are better, or they're more intuitive, or, something of that nature. But as I was studying about this, it hit me. I was like, man, if you look at the genders, who matures faster?
Oh, yeah.
Women mature
by
faster.
far.
Like, she just got to the point where she understood maturationally that there was a bigger consequence here first, and was able to make that choice because she matured to that level earlier. Anyway, but before they partake of the fruit, they really weren't going anywhere. They still had agency, but it was fairly meaningless. Now, then on that cookie sheet, I just put a little book under one corner so that it was tilted just a little bit towards captivity and death. And I held up a marble and I said, okay, this represents you. I'm going to put you at the top corner. Where's the marble going to go?
You're going to go to the opposite corner. Yeah.
It's like, are you sure? Okay, so I put it there. Yep, went to captivity and death. I got another marble. Where's this marble going to go?
Same thing.
Same place, are you sure? But I thought you had choice. What about this one? Same place.
Same thing.
Okay, so why is it going to captivity and death every time?
Well, I mean, I guess you have to explain what your where your point is getting.
Physically.
I mean, physically, it's just because that's where the pan is tilted to.
And why does tilting make any difference?
You've got gravity.
Gravity. There's a force, an unseen force,
right,
that is guiding it the path of least resistance, right? And much of our agency, I kind of feel like, is like that.
Okay.
Where there are forces acting upon us that we don't even realize are there, that are pulling us down. And yes, we do make choice, but kind of meaningless choice, because we're not using those forces in positive ways. So those forces in our lives that are kind of guiding us, I would say our culture or the algorithms, and like everything that's around us. Yeah, like you could, like, obviously I have a choice. I could choose something different than this or this, but the situation that I'm in, like the path of least resistance, like there's no reason for me to do anything different.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I'm trying to wrap my mind around how much what I think of this object lesson here. Go ahead. I'll let you keep going.
And so, as we go through life and gain experience, yes, we need to set goals for the things that we do,
Mm-hmm.
choosing righteousness and striving to follow the gospel plan, and even just physical health and like everything. Like there's things that we can do to make good choices. However, if we forget about the unseen forces in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't change those inputs, it's like what you fill yourself with will ultimately guide you.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not think you're not actively choosing those things. Like they're just being forced upon you in the culture. Is that what I'm saying? Those forces are there. And if we don't think about those forces and we only think about our action, then those forces are still going to act against us. But
Right.
if we can think, okay, what forces are influencing me that I don't realize are influencing me?
Okay.
Make sense?
Now I'm
Can
on
we
track
tilt
here.
that then? So I took the book from that corner and I moved it to the other corner
Right.
so that it was tilted towards liberty and eternal life.
Mm-hmm.
And then every time, and you know what? Might the marble go slightly different? Jet a little bit differently each way. Like, yeah,
Sure.
you're still going to make wrong and choices periodically, and you're going to do stupid things periodically, but you're tilted in the right direction because
Right.
you've affected the influences that are guiding you there.
Okay. So I agree, and I think I disagree slightly, but I think I mostly agree with you on the analogy here. I think what I essentially am coming down to, at least what I'm getting out of this, is because I agree, we do have all of these influences that we can't really control what social media says. We can't control what the news says or what the people around us are doing or acting like. But we can control which social media outlets we're listening to or which people we're hanging out with. So while I can't control what action happens with that book placement, I can control my choices. I can choose to have that book be in the right position to affect the outcome that I want it to. Essentially,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm following you there. I'm
Okay.
agreeing. I agree.
I think where maybe there's a little bit of pushback might be on the idea that you're just going to death captivity without you ever knowing it. Like,
Right.
like there is, we do, so, and once again, it's step by step because little kids don't understand what they're being influenced by. But this is part of mortality. This is the whole reason that we're here, is to learn what those unseen forces are and
Right.
to
And
affect positive change.
that's part of the whole, like you said, part of mortality. That's part of our life experience, is to learn right from wrong. And there are a whole number of reasons why you might wake up and realize that your book has tilted you the wrong direction. Whether you've had certain experiences that have told you that the opposition of those choices that you're making has said, "Oh, hold up, I need to change my life." Maybe you've had an actual spiritual event where it's you feel like you've heard the voice of God, or the Spirit has pricked your heart in a way that has said you need to change your life. Or there's a lot of different ways that can come about. But this is why self-reflection is so important.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to, and humility. This is why I would say humility is so important scripturally. The Savior taught so much about being humble. If you can humble yourself and look at your life and the decisions you're making and the choices that you're making, you can then, if the idea is to look at your life through an eternal lens, right? Have the grand scheme of things, the big picture. Then it allows you to make the necessary changes to yourself, if you're willing to.
Yeah.
To change your direction.
And ultimately, as we become more accountable throughout our lives, and this is where realizing that there's still a lot of things that I haven't gained enough experience on to really know what the best thing is. I'm following through the motions, and I'm striving to imitate the best examples that I can think of. And this is where imitation never really goes away. You're either imitating Satan or you're imitating Christ. And the choice is between those two things, and that's the power of Christ. That's the primary force that's going to tilt you in the direction. But it is still going to be it's through the process of mortality. This is why mortality works, is because you might be tilted in the wrong way, but that hopefully through that opposition, those experiences, it makes you, it kicks you into gear and is like, oh, wait a second, these things are influencing me.
And yeah, that opposition really is important. The trick is recognizing the opposition, because sometimes it's not so easy to recognize that opposition is actually beneficial. Like if you're making poor life choices, I'm just gonna throw out a random example here. I mean, you think of somebody that's addicted to drugs and gambling and is just making poor choice after poor choice after poor choice, and all of their consequences keep landing them in jail or trouble with the mob or I don't know whatever it is. Yeah. Are those things? The trick is getting that person to wake up and say, this is the consequence. This opposition, me going into jail or getting beat up because I'm not paying my gambling debts or whatever it is. Can you tell I watch movies? Is that opposition helping me recognize that I'm making poor choices and that there's a better way, or is it just this is just the way life is and I'm just going to continue going down this path?
Well, this is where the quintessential story of the person that hits rock bottom, right? Like they make all the wrong choices and they hit the most ultimate low, and for many people that ultimate low becomes their highest spiritual experience, right? Like they're so rock bottom hard that then they suddenly have a coming to Jesus type moment. Now, is everyone going to have that?
No,
not necessarily. And I mean,
and not everybody needs it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, not everybody has to hit rock bottom. They can choose accordingly, and why that is, I don't necessarily know. We know that we're all going to make different choices, and we're all going to attain different levels of glory, but that agency and mortality and opposition is what chisels off all the edges and ultimately will take you to the destination that you choose.
That's that refiner's fire. Like you're talking about chiseling off the rough edges and
absolutely
making you something beautiful. Okay,
so jumping to a related but slightly different concept, and that is, as we're going through life, especially in the culture that we live in, there's a lot of consumerism, and we do consume things. Like we have to consume things. That's part of the imitation. Like you whether it's consuming digital content on your phone, whether it's education. I mean, if you think about it, like most education is consuming information, and then the whole point is that though it should be that you're consuming so that you can create. And moving to that. But we live in a culture that is so dominant on the consumption side that we neglect the creation side. And just recognizing that, I think, is valuable when it comes to making choices. So in our covenants, a covenantal relationship is very, very different from a consumeristic relationship. Now, like, there's things you're going to have consumer relationships with, like soap. You buy it, you use it, it's gone. Marriage being the quintessential covenantal relationship, right? Where there's a commitment really early on. Before there's been a lot of pain, before there's been a lot of suffering, before there's been a lot of hardship, you commit to something. And it's in that commitment, through the future hardship and beauty, that something bigger is made of it, right? It creates, covenants create something that could not be created any other way. Typically, there's a union in people, 1 + 1 = 2. But a marriage, just on the creation side of, like, physical creation side, like in my marriage, my wife's having her 9th child, so we're going to be 1 + 1 = 11 here pretty soon. And that applies in the physical realm, but that also applies in the emotional relationship and meaning realm as well. That
For sure.
meaning is created when we commit covenantally to things. I don't know if you have any comments, but
that just reminds me of how important and why we emphasize family so much. Is having that marriage between man and woman is so powerful and strong compared to any other relationship that you can have here on earth. More than best friends or brothers or sisters, like having your husband or wife, that relationship is going to carry you through so much. And so the amount of things that I can, not just having children with my wife, but the amount of things that I can do because of my marriage with my wife is so much bigger and better and more numerous than what I would be doing on my own.
Absolutely. And in speaking about covenant, I feel like marriage is one that all people kind of understand. Like, there's value there. In our very consumeristic society, that's not how people live in a marriage.
Right.
Most people treat their marriage in a consumeristic way. It's like, you know what, this isn't meeting my needs right now, so goodbye.
Yeah.
And
which is why you've got divorce rates that are skyrocketing, and
absolutely.
more and more people aren't getting married, but just cohabitating together and being engaged for 50 years until they finally decide to get married or move on.
So as far as decisions that determine our destiny in a culture that has forces that are pushing against us, this is one of the cultural forces, this consumeristic ideology that you treat everything as a consumer. And I think if we can once again stand back, see the eternal perspective, and look at, okay, what things, not just marriage, what else can we treat from a covenantal perspective? And just as a thought exercise, our baptismal covenant. There's 3 primary promises that we always talk about in that. And I kind of thought about these a little bit differently. So we're all familiar with these covenants, right? So we take his name upon us. Essentially, in my mind, that's an identity. The world talks about a lot of identities.
Right.
So when we identify as something, that's a covenantal way of thinking of something. Okay?
Okay.
The second one, so keeping the commandments. Now, we always focus on keeping the commandments. I actually, in my thinking this week on this, it just totally shifted the way I think about it. Because when I think of keeping the commandments, I think of like the checklist of like all the commandments that I need to do. But what's the first and great commandment?
Love God.
Love God. And is it John 14:15? If you love me, keep my commandments, right? So like the focus of the commandments should be love.
Yeah.
And love of God primarily. So we have an identity as a child of God that leads to other positive identities as well. We keep the commandments by loving God. And then we remember. And that can mean a lot of different things. Always remember him, like in the baptismal covenant, we're speaking of Christ, but from a covenantal relationship with something, you remember that thing that you want to do. You're doing things to constantly remember, and you are, when you do fall short, you remember Christ is there to forgive you, right?
That's the one I think is different, like, for each individual. Like the first 2, I think, are fairly standard. Like you and I we take upon the name of Christ, and we want to be, disciples of Christ, and then we keep the commandments. The commandments are the same for everybody. But remembering, I think, is the most, maybe the more individual out of the 3 that we do there. because the way you remember Christ is going to be different than the way I remember Christ. We may do some of the similar things, like go to church or read your scriptures, whatnot, but there are different things that are going to be more individualistic for how I actually remember the commandments and covenants and that Christ. Just an interesting
valid point. So why am I talking about the baptismal covenant? Because I know we're referencing the baptismal covenant in terms to the specifics that of Christ. However, I think that taking those three principles and applying it as a lens through which we view other relationships that we have can show us how to live a covenantal relationship in a positive way with things. Okay, so as an example, let's say you really want to affect positive change in your health. Okay? You just want to be healthy, right? And let's just contrast a covenantal view with a consumeristic view. Okay? So, identity. What type of identity? If you want good physical health, like, how are you identifying?
How are you going to identify? I mean, maybe you're looking for something specific here, but I would identify, I would be looking at good, healthy examples to identify as someone that works out and has a strong body, or, spiritually, I would want to say I'm a child of God.
I'm a child of God, and He's given me a temple.
Right.
And it's a beautiful temple, and He wants me to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I identify as somebody who takes care of His body.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like,
gotcha.
That's my identity. Now, from a worldly, consumeristic standpoint, how do a lot of people identify? From a physical standpoint.
From a physical standpoint, I look like crap and I eat like crap.
How many people self-body image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm fat, I'm ugly.
Yeah.
How can anybody care for me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if that's your identity, then even though both people are going to try to improve, right? Like,
right.
So then let's get to the commandments, right? So the consumer is like, well, okay, I want good health.
Ozempic.
Yeah, baby. I can look good and just take a pill. Or you know what? Dieting, I gotta get down. I've got a cruise in a month. I really need to get down. I'm just gonna.
Oh, this is feeling personal.
No. Kendall went on a cruise.
I just went on a cruise and I enjoyed myself there,
which is fantastic. I'm glad that you enjoyed yourself there. But this idea that I'm gonna look good for this specific thing or for whatnot, and it's not the long-term identity of like,
sure,
I love God, I want to take care of my body, and I'm the type of person that eats healthy and exercises. Like, I'm that's who I want to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So differ there, and then remembering, someone that has a covenantal identity, maybe they're researching or doing podcasts frequently to remind them of the principles that they're wanting to put into effect in their lives, or they're they're getting good education and giving themselves constant reminders, as well as remembering that when they mess up or they aren't perfect, or they're like that, they can always repent and get back
redemption.
Yep, there's redemption. They can get back on, right? As opposed to the other person who gets off or hits bottom and it's just like, oh, this is too hard, I can't do it anymore, right?
Right.
So a consumeristic view versus a covenantal view, and that's just one way that you could apply that, was to like a physical realm. And I think that it's good as we think about, what's going to positively affect change. So I don't know if you ever heard the term growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, that's what a covenantal view does, is it views you as not perfect, but as something that can become better and grow.
That's where, the difference is the perspective, in my opinion. It's not, because you can feel the same thing with the consumeristic or the spirit. Like, you're going to have the emotions and the things that you're going through are the same, for instance, let's stick with the working out and having a good body. Like, you still have either option. You still have to eat decent, and you still have to work out and be active. But the mental shift, the perspective is different. Am I doing this through the spiritual God's eyes lens, or through the I want to look good on the cover of the magazine lens? And so you're still doing a lot of the same things.
And you might have two people that actually look physically very similar because they're all doing those things, but one who's very content and happy with life, and the other who's not.
That I think is what it comes down to, is what is your perspective in life and your mentality, how do you view yourself and those actions. I think that's probably what you're getting at here.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of reminds me of the stone builder building. Have you heard that story? It's been in a couple of books I've read, I feel like. But
sounds vaguely familiar.
There's a stonemason, and someone's walking down the road, and he sees one of the stonemasons, and as he walks by, he's like, "Oh, that's hard work. You guys have a lot." And the guy just starts going off. He's like, "Yeah, I'm out here 12 hours a day, brutal sun. We're lifting heavy things all day long. Life sucks. Like, it's rough." And then he goes down the road a little bit to another stonemason who's doing the exact same work. And he's like, "Man, I'm so sorry. This is rough work." And the guy's like, "Oh, no, you're right. It is hard work. And we're out here 12 hours a day. And it's heavy, but do you see what we're building? We're building a temple. We're building a cathedral. We're building
something amazing.
Something that he has that mindset difference.
It's really that's what it comes down to, is your mindset, your perspective. If you can take a moment to reflect and remember what your purpose is, finding that meaning behind everything, then your perspective, your outlook on life and the decisions you're going to make is going to change for the positive. But if you don't, then you're going to get into that negative slide of feeling down on yourself, or not feeling like what you're doing means anything, and that's where life is just kind of bleh. It's not fun. The people that you see, that you interact with, that are happy and enjoy life, are not always the ones that look the best, or have the most money, or have the best cars or jobs. It's the ones that find joy in the little things and have a good, positive, spiritual outlook on life. And really, I think it comes down to, like I said earlier, having humility. The happiest people that I know are humble, and they look for the best in life rather than trying to just muddle through whatever's put in front of them.
And even in a church that is extremely covenantal, I mean, like, we focus on covenants all the time, right? Like, how often you hear the covenant path, right? And yet, I feel like there are many of us in different aspects that we view certain covenants very consumeristically, right? It's like, I have to do what? I have to do what? And we don't understand once, we don't lead with love, and maybe we don't identify quite in the proper way. And you got to get those things right. But that is a process of time. Agency is something that I think we need to give ourselves a lot of grace in that innocent phase. I think there's a lot of things that we like to think, oh yeah, I know that. I know what I'm doing. I know whatnot. But as we gain more experience and learn more things, like, I'm amazed the older I get, just how many things I thought I knew that I had all wrong. And then I'm relearning, like, oh yeah, okay.
And that's, I think what you said is great. The grace. Give yourself some grace. We all are learning. And we've talked about this before, judging others, but, like, give each other grace as well. What you have come to learn, I may not be there yet, and vice versa, right? And so it's important not to judge others based off of where you are. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes and figure out where they're coming from. And then we can work together to improve and get to a better place.
So I also think that there are those of us that we're still very strongly in the innocent imitation phase, but we've had really good examples of things to imitate.
Sure.
That we've really not had a lot of opposition in that imitation. I was talking to my wife about this, and she's like, when I was a kid, I really felt like I had the gift of belief. Like I just believed everything. Like I still do. Like I believe, but, and I didn't used to, like, there were no doubts. Like I just believed. It's like now, like I doubt. Like there's things that I don't know and that I'm wrestling with and that I'm worried about and that I'm like, part of me feels like sinful that I even have
that you
doubts
have doubt.
and
Yeah.
hardships with things. She's like, but the strangest thing is that, like, before I had faith, but I didn't doubt, and now I have faith and I doubt, but the faith that I have is way stronger than what it used to be. And just this idea that faith that is not, that has no opposition is maybe faith, but it's also not the strongest faith yet because it hasn't been tested.
I would definitely say it is faith.
Yeah.
In her case, she definitely has
Absolutely.
faith. But you're right that faith without that opposition, that's the opposition is. That's why we have opposition, is so that our faith can progress, and eventually, as Alma in the Book of Mormon says, become a knowledge, right? But it's not going to become a knowledge if we're not testing that faith, if we're not learning and continuing to, put ourselves in situations where we can grow. And
that's probably one of my biggest regrets as a missionary, actually, was that I think I was in that boat of like, I had faith, but it hadn't really been tested much. And I just expected everybody to do things the way that I did it.
Yeah.
And, I came from a long line of people that had served missions and lots of mission stories of like extreme obedience and like doing all these things. And then I got on the mission, I was like, you guys aren't doing this. You aren't not doing this. And I was very judgmental and very hypercritical of people. And I didn't realize that my mission was not just for those outside of the church trying to bring them to Christ, but a lot of my mission was also for my companions and those that had different life experiences.
Right.
And anyway.
Yeah, very, very much for the missionary himself. I mean, that's why the cliche is the best convert on your mission is yourself.
Yeah.
I think I totally agree with that.
Well, hope you feel like this has been beneficial.
Good conversation. Hopefully, it makes you think about things, how you view your life a little bit. Try and figure out what do you identify with. Is it Christ or is it that consumption in whatever aspect of life? And try to remember Him a little bit more.
Why do you choose what you're choosing? Are you just going through the motions, or are you actively not being acted upon, but acting of your own free will and choice? So that's what mortality is about. The choice is ours. So go live your life.
And choose to.
And choose to follow Christ.
This is a No Bushel Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.